You are playing a video game, watching a Hollywood action movie, or listening to a real plane pilot, and they all constantly repeat the same name over and over.
Roger.
Roger that. Roger.
Roger that.
Roger that.
Roger that.
Roger that.
Roger that.
Roger this, Roger that. Who exactly is Roger, and why does he seem to be the most cooperative, understanding man in the history of the universe? Is he a legendary military commander? A brilliant inventor? Or perhaps the first guy to ever pick up a microphone? Spoiler alert, Roger never existed. He is a ghost. But to understand why an entire planet still talks to a ghost, we need to go back to an era when trying to say hello across a long distance could actually get you killed. The communication system behind this word was built in a world where one misunderstood syllable on a battlefield radio could send an entire artillery barrage onto your own coordinates instead of the enemy. So, how did a fake name become the thing standing between order and absolute catastrophe? To find out, we have to travel back in time. Let us rewind to the 1800s, long before anyone had a voice on the radio, back when the only way to send a message across a country was through a wire and a series of clicks. Samuel Morse had just given the world the telegraph, and for the first time in history, you could talk to someone hundreds of kilometers away without a horse involved. Exciting, except every single click cost money, and typing out a polite reply was a financial disaster.
Send. I have received your message and I fully understand it. That'll be 50 cents. 50 cents? Can I just send the letter R? Sure, 1 cent. Deal.
And just like that, the letter R for received became the fastest, cheapest way to confirm a message had landed. Problem solved. For about 50 years. Then humans got greedy and decided wires were too limiting, and that we should just throw voices directly into the air instead. Radio was born. And radio, in its early years, sounded less like technology and more like a fight between a swarm of bees and a broken vacuum cleaner, which meant the old telegraph trick immediately fell apart. On a wire, a dot is a dot. In the open air, through a crackling microphone, over an engine, in a storm, a single spoken letter becomes a coin flip.
Attack target B. D or B? Honestly, I have no idea what you just heard. Right. Fingers crossed. Bomb target D.
This is not an exaggeration for effect, it is simply the basic physics problem early radio users were dealing with. Certain letters are acoustically similar, and static does not care about your chain of command. So a new idea appeared. Instead of saying the letter itself, assign each letter its own unique, unmistakable word. B is not B anymore. B is Baker. That way, even through terrible audio, no one confuses an entire syllable for static. Except everyone built their own version. The British had one system, the Americans had another, and various branches of the military had their own preferences layered on top. So you had allied forces, technically speaking the same language, using completely different phonetic vocabularies to spell out the exact same letters.
Message received. Robert.
Who is Robert?
It means R. Received.
We say rush.
Now there are two people I don't know.
It was less a unified system and more several unified systems arguing with each other. And arguing over vocabulary is a fine hobby during peacetime. During a world war, with allied forces coordinating real operations together, it became an actual liability. So in the 1940s, American and British military planners sat down to build one shared phonetic alphabet for joint use, nicknamed the Abel-Baker alphabet after its first two entries. And for the letter R, out of the competing options on the table, the word that stuck was Roger. Roger caught on fast, and it picked up a job that went beyond simply representing the letter R. Over military radio, saying the single word Roger became shorthand for an entire sentence. I have received your transmission. It was quick. It was distinct enough to survive bad audio. And once you put it in the mouths of millions of servicemen using it constantly for years, it stopped feeling like code. It became instinct. Soldiers being soldiers, they also started combining it with other procedure words. Wilco, short for will comply, meant something stricter than Roger. Not just I heard you, but I heard you and I am doing it. Two different jobs hiding inside two very similar sounding words. We will come back to that because it becomes a much bigger deal later than anyone expects. For now, by the end of the war, Roger was everywhere in military aviation. It had a job, a reputation, and millions of loyal daily users. Which is exactly the moment history decided to fire him. Here is the turn nobody sees coming if they only know the story up to this point. In the years after the war, the alliance system got bigger. NATO was forming, bringing together dozens of countries with dozens of native languages who all needed one radio alphabet that worked equally well for everyone, not just English-speaking pilots. So a new international phonetic alphabet was developed and formally adopted in the mid-1950s, the one most people recognize instantly today. Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, all the way to Zulu. And under this new global standard, the letter R was reassigned. Its new official name was Romeo.
We are replacing Roger with Romeo. Romeo? We are fighter pilots, not poets. Do we blow kisses too? Yes, but professionally.
On paper, Roger's entire reason for existing had just been deleted. He was not the word for R anymore. Officially, as of the mid-1950s, Roger the alphabet code word was unemployed. This should have been the end of Roger. It wasn't. Because somewhere along the way, without anyone officially deciding it, Roger had already stopped being just a stand-in for the letter R. It had become its own separate word, meaning received, message understood, copy that used constantly, completely independent of whatever the alphabet called the letter R that week. Firing Roger from the alphabet did nothing, because Roger no longer worked for the alphabet. He had quietly promoted himself.
Command update. The alphabet says R is Romeo now. Roger. You mean Romeo? No, I mean Roger.
Pilots kept saying it. Veterans kept saying it out of habit. War films and television used it because audiences already recognized it instantly, which only reinforced it further. Truckers picked it up on citizens' band radios. Commercial aviation kept it circulating in cockpit-to-tower communication. Officially retired, practically immortal. On paper, Roger was dead. In practice, he was still reporting for duty in cockpits around the world. Which finally brings us to the confusion almost everyone carries around without realizing it. The difference between Roger and Wilco. Roger simply confirms that a message was received. That is it. It does not promise anything about what happens next. Wilco, short for will comply, goes a step further, meaning the message was received and the instruction will actually be carried out. In tightly disciplined radio procedure, that makes stacking them together. Roger Wilco a little bit redundant, since will comply already implies the message was received in the first place. It sounds sharp and cinematic, which is exactly why it shows up constantly in movies, even though in real, strict radio phrasing it is closer to saying, I heard you, and also, separately, I heard you.
Move to checkpoint 3. Roger, why are you still standing there? Roger confirms reception, not enthusiasm. Wilco, fine. Now it's legally binding.
That is the whole difference, hiding inside two almost identical sounding words for 80 years. Roger's next transformation happened on a much bigger stage than any battlefield. Through the 1960s, NASA Mission Control and the Apollo astronauts, many of whom came directly out of military and test pilot backgrounds, used Roger constantly during live, globally broadcast communications, confirming instructions, confirming data, confirming status, in front of televisions in millions of ordinary homes that had never heard a military radio in their lives. Every time an astronaut calmly said Roger before doing something genuinely terrifying at extraordinary distance from Earth, the word slid a little further into everyday civilian vocabulary until it stopped being military jargon entirely and became something people simply say to mean, understood, got it, moving on. There is also a persistent myth that Roger secretly stands for something official, like received order given, expect results. It does not. There was never a hidden acronym behind it. Roger became legendary through pure historical timing, a wartime code word that happened to attach itself to a simple, useful function at exactly the moment two-way radio was exploding across military aviation, then civilian aviation, then space, then popular culture. Most technologies disappear when something better replaces them. Nobody carries a pager because smartphones exist. Nobody sends telegrams because email is faster. Nobody develops film in a darkroom because digital cameras took over. Old systems usually vanish so completely that, within a generation, most people forget they ever existed. But every now and then, a tiny piece of one refuses to die. Roger is one of those rare survivors. A word born in muddy trenches because terrible radios kept swallowing single letters. Survived World War II, went to the moon with Apollo astronauts, and today is still shouted by 12-year-olds in Fortnite asking for a medkit. Modern radios are clearer than ever. Fiber optics carry our voices across oceans. Satellites bounce signals around the planet. We no longer need to yell Roger through the roar of a propeller just to be understood. The static disappeared. Roger didn't. Because it turns out the unreliable part was never really the machines, it was us. Drop a comment telling us which movie, aviation, or military phrase you use all the time without ever wondering where it came from. Because honestly, I'm still waiting for the perfect moment to yell Mayday when my computer freezes. Over and out.